Another thing that you want to think about as you're working on your piece is the relationship between the mouth and everything that surrounds it. So this is an area where people tend to very much so generalize. And what happens is they lose all the little bits of musculature that happen between here and here, here and here and here. And so again, that's another space within a portrait that's going to give you a lot of identifying features. They're so small, but it's going to make a big difference. And so those of you who are working in the cast hall from a portrait bust, some of these things have already been generalized for you. And so it's just a matter of looking for them, breaking them up into little shapes, and then replicating them for yourselves. Those of you who are working from an actual model or images of a model, you are going to have to break those down and simplify them for yourselves. And so when you're looking, you want to start to look for things that are happening. So you have a skin fold here up against this line here. And so we've got that. It's just, again, very general, a little severe right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to start to soften that. And I feel like there's also too much material here, so I will do some removing of that as well. I'm just using the side of my tool to scrape that back. And so I feel like I can see this form here that happens sometimes when I change my face. That is something I think in portraiture, watching people and seeing what they do and how they move their faces. So sometimes things will only appear when they smile a certain way or they move their mouth a certain way. And you may want to capture that as part of your portrait. There are people who the face that best identifies them or is like the core of who they are only happens occasionally. So watching for that is going to be hugely important. So it might be the raise of an eyebrow, it might be the smirk of the corner of a mouth. Just keep your eyes peeled. So I'm softening this, trying to maintain that skin fold, but in a way that is not as severe as I had it. And then also trying to bridge this gap here. I had a fair amount of material missing from the side of the nose here. I will need to add more form for that nostril, but we're not gonna worry about that just yet. And so I'm refining this clay a little bit just so I can see what's going on with that line. So I feel like I'm doing this in this way and then shifting this form down a little bit. And then you can draw the edge of where that nostril comes. And if you get to a point where it's bothering you that there's clay missing, that would be a good time to start putting it in. Again, you want to put on small pieces as opposed to big giant chunks, because what happens is you're going to have to just take that off, put it on, take it up, put it on. And so the idea is that you are adding and removing as little material as possible so you can get closer a little bit at a time when we get to a stage like this. And I'm also going to play with the shape of those lips. We talked about having a proper angle for the lips when we first made them. This would be a good time to check to make sure that your lips are headed in at the right angle. So I feel like mine may have come a little bit forward, so I'm gonna push them back just a little bit and make sure that this part of the mouth comes down and around. If you lose the corner of your mouth where the lips intersect, always just draw it back in. And so same thing goes here. I keep saying it about everything, but you want to make sure that you're working on this side as well as this side. For the sake of getting you a little further along, I've been focusing mostly on one side, but it is hugely important to work your piece the same all over. You don't want to end up with one perfect eye or one perfect corner of the mouth and you realize everything's in the wrong spot and you have to move it and do it all over again. Or again, trying to replicate that, which, good luck. I feel like since I've removed clay from the other side of the face, I'm going to remove a little from here. Generally in these classes, I would just work alongside you guys from the model as well. But just because this semester is a little different, we're doing things differently. So it just goes to show that you know, if you find yourself at home and you don't have a model, use your own head. As long as you can measure your own eyes and face carefully and have the ability to look at yourself, then you will always have a model, no matter what. So I'm noticing as I'm building this up that this side of the face, if I'm looking at the lips, this side sits this way, and then this one feels like it goes much further back. So I want to add some form to the side of the orbicularis oris because I don't want to wait any longer, because then I'll do something and I'll have to mess it up to add more clay. So I want to make sure that if the expression calls for it, that these sides of the mouth each seem even. Again, this is, for many of you, your first introduction into making a portrait head. And as I keep saying throughout, there are tons and tons and tons of ways to do this. I think that for me, what's most important is getting something on the armature showing you that you are able to make something that looks human. I think a lot of time that knocks most of the self-doubt that people have in their heads out. So you're making humans. And so then when we go in for the second time, when you do this again, we can talk more about specific details and how to build up. I think a lot of the problems though is that first time is really feeling like the approach avoidance of not doing it, or feeling like you're not going to be good at it just because you've never done it before. So let's just get one in and then we'll continue from there. There are other ways of doing this where we could do step by step. Step 1, you do this. Step 2, you do that. Step 3, you do that. The reason I approach it this way with you guys is I think that this method allows for some of your natural skill to come forward, whereas if we were doing step by step by step, it would be more likely that your pieces would look much the same. And so not only am I just trying to loosen you up and get you to sculpt something, a portrait in this case, I'm also trying to see how you approach these problems. And so you might be doing something a little differently and in different orders, or just in a different way than someone else. And that's what I'm looking for as well, just as much as seeing the end product. And so as I'm seeing you guys work on these, I can help sort of push you in the right direction and see which of you want a more linear way of working, and the others which are going to be a little more freeform and reading the form that you're seeing, not measuring as much, maybe reading the light, which is one of the ways that I work. But then I also want to start to fill in areas that feel like big gaps. So this area here, the way that it meets this area here, you want to soften those things. If there are skin folds that are too severe, you are going to put 10 years on somebody, or 40 years. So you want to make sure that there are not excessive skin folds. Also, if you remove skin folds, you're going to make someone look younger. So, you know, that's fine with me. Joe did joke the other day that I was old. So I want to make sure that my sculpture, I don't know, doesn't reflect that. I don't know. Anywho, so I'm adding these forms in, being mindful of any shadows as I see them, reading this light, because again, my piece and I are in the same light. I feel like I'm getting too much shadow here that I'm seeing. So I'm going to push this down, and I'm going to try and adjust that a little bit. And as you guys are working, obviously I'm a little off to the side for the sake of making a video that you can see and my head's not in the way. You should have a front view of what you're doing. Again, being aware of not blocking your light, but making sure that your piece and your subject, be it a cast from the cast hall or your model or even photographs of your model, are in the same light. So you soften this. And so I'm feeling like doing some of these things really starts to draw attention to the fact that other forms of the face need to be built up more. So that's what I'm going to head and do next. I feel like there's some form missing from the top of the head and then also from the jaws here. So when you are working on these forms, you start to take notes. Okay, what do I need next? What do I need next? What do I need next? Obviously the nose needs to get refined. But so before you move on to any of that, do try to make the two sides of your face as even as your model's is. So that way you have something that you're starting with that reads as true as possible, and then you can make decisions about other areas of the head. So far, so good. All right, I'll see you guys soon.